the markets have declined since the month rolled around and the markets opened. We had at the end of last year a pretty big boom in the stock market. People were stunned that the markets did as well as they did at the end of last year. And now suddenly they're slowly in decline. Now, I will just look for right now, as I'm talking, the NASDAQ's up 8, Dow is down 97.9, the S&P is up 0.71. Not a super strong day after the labor numbers, not good. But one of the reasons the markets did not keep going up at the rollover into the new year is there's a growing awareness that the Federal Reserve is not going to cut rates quickly. There had been optimism at the end of last year that they were. There's a problem. Inflation still, it's going down. The Fed is very happy with where inflation is. They expect it to be about 2%, which is their goal. But there's a problem caused by none other than Joseph Robinette Biden. Joe Biden is refusing to act strongly, decisively, and thoroughly in the Red Sea. What does that have to do with inflation? Well, most shipping that comes from Asia to Europe, almost all of it, in fact, traverses the Suez Canal in the Red Sea. And it can't right now because the Houthi rebels are targeting ships in the shipping lanes. The Houthi rebels are funded by the Iranians. The Houthi are targeting the ships. So most major shipping companies, Maersk being one of the biggest, they're bypassing it. Well, to bypass the Red Sea, you have to go down to the Indian Ocean and around Cape Horn into the Atlantic Ocean. The seas tend to be rougher. It takes at least 15 more days to do that. You want to know that what that's done in the last month? In the last month, the cost to ship goods from Asia to Europe by ship has gone up 173% in a month. 173% in 1 month. The cost to ship goods to the United States, East Coast, has gone up 52% and is going up still. There's another problem. So it's not just the Suez Canal. So to get around and through the Suez Canal, you got to avoid the pirates. So now you're going around the Cape Horn. You're sailing around South Africa, up along the west coast of Africa and around. Well, the Panama Canal, there's a drought. So the Panama Canal has had to reduce shipping. The rate of transport through the Red Sea is down 30%. The rate of transport through the Panama Canal is down 8%. To get from Asia to the East Coast of the United States, typically what you do is you go across the Pacific, through the Panama Canal, into the Caribbean, and up. Some are routing now through the Cape Horn and around Africa. That takes it a lot longer. They had been routing through the Red Sea to get to the East Coast. It's a longer trip, but when you're limiting the traffic through the Red Sea, through the Panama Canal due to drought, it can actually be quicker because there are only so many spots per day allowed to go through the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is a narrow shipping lane that goes into several lakes in Panama, goes through a lock system. The water is down so low, they've had to limit the shipping. So for some ships, it's actually easier, get this, to sail from, say, Hong Kong to go around India, around Africa, up and across the Atlantic because they don't have to wait for traffic permissions through the Panama Canal. The result of all of this is that shipping costs have skyrocketed, 173% increase for rates from Asia to Europe, a 52% rate increase from Asia to North America and Eastern Seaboard. And all the summer inventories are being delayed now. So typically right now, major companies, the retailers, you name it, Targets, the Walmarts of the world, they're acquiring their summer inventory now. And their summer inventory, it's put on ships. It's sailed to the West Coast and the East Coast via the Panama Canal. And because of the delays of the Panama Canal and because of the Red Sea turmoil, everything's going to be delayed by 3 weeks to a month. So you're going to have a delay in the summer season. That's going to cause retailers problems. Now, All of this is directly related to what Joe Biden is doing in the Red Sea. What Joe Biden is doing is absolutely nothing. That's the problem. They're doing wrist slaps at the Houthi rebels. Don't you do that, you bad boys, you stop. I mean, they're baby talking the Houthi. Bad boy, don't you launch that drone. You blow them up. Kenneth McKenzie is a retired U.S. Marine general. He served as the commander of the U.S. Central Command from 2019 to 2022. He has a piece in the Wall Street Journal today. Iranian leaders work with Lenin's dictum that you probe with bayonets. If you find mush, you push. If you find steel, you withdraw. Tehran and its proxies are pressing their attack because they haven't confronted steel. The ability to stop such probing generally depends on a swift and violent counterattack. Delaying and equivocating usually means the response needed to reestablish deterrence has to be much larger than it would have been if it had been applied in a timely manner. As a military officer, I have observed such hesitancy and lack of strategic clarity across several presidential administrations. In 2019, an early and sharp response to Iranian provocation might have ended the escalatory spiral well before the U.S. had to strike Soleimani and accept the possibility of theater war. A case in point is Houthi activity in and around Bab al-Mandeb Strait. In the national security strategy and national defense strategy of the United States, we emphasize the importance of free passage through such global choke points. Protecting this principle and our strategic priority is more important than avoiding escalation. Taking strong action against the Houthi isn't likely to lead to theater-wide escalation. Iran is waging a hidden-hand war from Yemen because it is cheap and because there are few consequences for Tehran. A forceful response against the Houthis designed to make them feel the pain of continuing their irresponsible behavior wouldn't ineluctably lead to a large-scale Iranian response. Pursuing the strategy is especially consequential. The Chinese are watching to see how we respond to a threat involving a narrow strait. Unfortunately, it is the United States that is being deterred, not Iran and its proxies. To reset deterrence, we must apply violence that Tehran understands. Paradoxically, if done early, this violence could have been a far smaller and more measured scale. Indecision has placed us in this position. There's a way forward, but it requires the United States to set aside the fear of escalation and act according to the priorities of our strategic documents and concepts. Iranians understand steel. They also understand mush. It's time to choose. He's absolutely right. The reality of the situation is this. It is of our geostrategic and economic importance in this country and our global strategies to ensure the free, fair shipping lanes of traffic and that they remain open and unaffected by piracy. The Houthi have decided to engage not just in piracy, but terrorism against shipping lanes. It is in the United States' national interest. It is in the documents that outline the goals of our national interest, and it is in the documents that outline the strategic operations of the United States that when this happens in any major shipping lane, the United States military takes action. And Joe Biden has decided to ignore every one of those documents. Joe Biden has decided to ignore every one of those policies. And the result is that the Houthis and the Iranians are more and more emboldened, and the Chinese are watching all of this dithering by Joe Biden. Blow them up. Blow up the Houthi. End this and reopen the Suez Canal. The fact that the Biden administration is dithering and twiddling its hands is going to have economic consequence and national security consequence combined. Shipping costs have dramatically increased in the last month. The Federal Reserve can't reduce interest rates because inflation's going to come just from the higher cost through shipping. It's going to affect the rest of the economy. Ironically, it's in Joe Biden's best interests to respond forcibly and aggressively against the Houthi, but he can't bring himself to do it because Joe Biden doesn't like to be decisive. He's a dithering old fool in the presidency, and it's going to cost us money and probably lives as well, because he refuses to be decisive against the Iranians, because he's convinced that, like Barack Obama, he can rethink our strategy in the Middle East. And to this date, the only people who have rethunk it successfully are the Iranians, and they did so by co-opting both administrations, which is probably why he's not willing to do anything. He's got a bunch of Iranian sympathizers within his administration who are advising him not to.